Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. The aim of today is to be interactive and create an interactive discussion, but we'll lay out the ground first, because our view, this is a very important discussion to start developing. So please, everyone, please chip in with your thoughts and views. The title is Hospitality Education. Is it time for a radical rethink? Is hospitality education genuinely meeting the needs of students in the modern market, of industry and of society? And I suppose one of our questions is this an important time to make a stronger message about what hotel schools and hospitality can do in terms of education can do? Because actually probably there's never been a greater need than the core skills of hospitality. So that just lays down the key questions that we want to pose today. This is the first of two sessions we want to run. We're running another on the 30th when we have Donald and Sloan, who's on the call today, and I'm sure we'll have some things to say, and Ruth Royland, ex-EHL, talking. But what we want to do is actually really raise the bar of this discussion, because we are very aware that young people particularly are probably feeling the effects of COVID-19 more than most. But actually more important than that, we need a world-class education system to back up a world-class industry. But let's get into that discussion and hear all your thoughts and obviously what we need to be done at the same time. Can I introduce Yanis, Chair of CHME, good friend, to probably start, kick off and pose the initial questions. Yanis, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'll just do a very short intro, if I may. This effort started pre-COVID, where a number of you were already participating in a discussion around the link between industry and academia. Now, it's very easy to forget what has happened in the past seven months or so, or eight. Within a time span of 8 months, we went from discussing the gap of skills in the hospitality sector to a point where there have been predictions. Earlier in the summer, there were predictions up to 1 million job losses. Currently, the predictions are about 500,000 job losses in the sector. Coupled with the fact that we still see a number of university courses, universities are traditionally focused on hospitality management education, cancelling or withdrawing from teaching hospitality courses, and the same with colleges. We see a number of closures of hospitality focused courses. UCAS numbers still show a downturn for students who are interested in studying hospitality. And the key here of this discussion is to move away from the pessimism of yesterday to the anger of today to the optimism of tomorrow. Can we come with a couple of action points which we can really draw from these discussions, where both Jimmy and EP and other colleagues who volunteer can spearhead in making sure we go closer to a more positive message? I'll remind colleagues the 5 themes or sub-themes that came as a unified voice from both industry and academia in the last session. And I think everybody agreed that we need to finally come up with an agreement on what best practice is when it comes to hospitality education, because there is a lot of, there is incoherence between what academics might want to achieve versus what the industry needs and what the students would like to see as a career in the future. The second point was, is there any way where we can monitor industry links and engagement with universities and colleges? Because there is a lot of best practice at an individual level, but perhaps we're not praising ourselves enough as a body of colleagues. And the third one, which was not a theme, but it was important that we had a student voice, and we invited a number of students today. I'm not sure if the Surrey student is with us. Anita, do you see? No. Okay.
Someone's still joining, in fairness.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that was happening, so I wouldn't necessarily recognise the name.
Mark recommended him, but I don't see the name here. So hopefully he'll join us, because it is important that we talk to our students, but it would be important to have somebody here in this discussion that is representing either a young graduate or a student. and the exchange between industry and academia, try to somehow close that gap that might exist. And of course, the umbrella of COVID right now, and what might happen with second wave, what might happen with the industry as a whole, what support the industry can give for the industry. I don't think we should go into politics and discuss what government should be doing. But the important thing is, what can academia also do to support the industry? I'm hoping that this gives a lot of thought to kickstart some of the discussions that we might have today.
Good, thank you, Yanis. Shall we bring in just a couple of different views to kick this off? Donald? I know you have some strong views on this.
Mute myself. Yeah, no, that's very useful, Yanis. Thank you very much. And I think that captures what was previously discussed. I think there's a more fundamental question for many, and that's about whether the institutions of which you are a part are supportive of hospitality education. Because I'm aware that for some, they can feel as if they're banging their heads against a brick wall, you know, in terms of embedding good practice and reaching out to external partners and so on. If at a fundamental level, the university or college of which you are a part isn't actually that supportive of the field generally. Speaking of someone who used to be at a school that was part of a university that was once very, very supportive, and then that rapidly tailed away under new leadership. And in a sense, I mean, this sounds rather brutal, but there might need to be a bit of a shakeout, because it's A, very frustrating for people to be part of an environment that isn't supportive, but B, it's much better to direct positive energy within environments where there is the possibility to flourish and for things to move forward positively. So that would probably be the first point I would make. Yanis mentioned how the situation has changed over the last 6 or 7 months. Now, obviously, this has thrown everything up into the air, and the conversation is likely to be quite different considering what's gone on. But I wonder if, rather than this being an entirely negative thing, whether or not the COVID crisis could present a positive opportunity to education, and I really believe that it does. I think there's an opportunity to change the narrative and for education to display how relevant it is to changing circumstances, and to convey also what a very positive contribution it can make to the lives of young people, first and foremost, but also to a sector that has been going through such difficulty. What might that responsiveness to the new situation look like? Well, I guess in the first instance, it's about the process of education. You know, it is, obviously there's been a rush to move things online, but more fundamentally than that, in this new world, is the means by which we engage in the educational process appropriate to the new normal, to use that overused phrase. Are we best preparing students through the educational experience for a new kind of world that's much more unpredictable? So is the student experience really genuinely lending itself to preparing students for a much more turbulent and risky world that they will be entering? Content of curriculum, of course, is that really keeping up to date with what is required? But also here very much links to partnerships with industry and how together can we move forward in a way that is preparing talent appropriately for a new world. So I think, you know, I liked Yanis's opening point about the fact that the basis of this conversation is to look forward positively. And I suppose I won't go on much more at this stage, but I think that what we should try to do is use the current difficulties that everyone is facing, not as a point to sink further into, you know, despair, but quite the opposite, to actually say that during challenging circumstances, you've got to develop a sense of hope. And what, in a very positive way, can education contribute to the future in the ways that I outlined? That's probably enough for now, Chris. And then...
That's great, Don. Thank you. lot to think about. David Poskett, can I bring you in at this point and just maybe hear your perspective?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I'm very controversial when it comes to education in this country, because I think a lot of the education in this country is not fit for purpose. And I think the curriculum in schools needs to have a radical rethink as well. And of course, they don't get the careers advice that they desperately need. This is a massive subject, because when I am talking to people across the globe, and as chair of the International Hospitality Council, as I said, we've got 100 colleges and universities, and some of them are actually booming in Asia. They're actually attracting a lot of students because they see there's jobs. Pre-COVID, they saw the jobs that were available, and also they know that, you know, once this pandemic, we come out of this pandemic, and there is a vaccine, and I'm confident there will be a vaccine. I'm regularly looking at the progress of vaccines across the globe, and we will start to boom again in hospitality. Hospitality is very much part of our economy, and we've seen how desperate the government were to get the hospitality industry back and running, because it's desperate for taxation and the economy as a whole. But I do think that the classical humanist education system that we have is no longer suitable for the 21st century. And when I look at writers on the sociology of education and policymakers, they're all saying exactly the same. In fact, the latest book out, called Head, Hand, Heart, was actually written before the COVID-19, but they have put a preface in about the effect of COVID-19 on how we must think of things in the future. And the knowledge-based economy has to be looked at very differently, and about how we must have people with the skills. And skills does not mean that you're not using your head. You know, that's where we have a real problem. They think that if someone works in an applied learning in skills, they're not using their head and their knowledge, which is nonsense. But that's the classical humanist curriculum and structure of our education system. And that is a real problem. Now, from my experience working in what was a technical college that became a college of higher education, that became a university, is they go down academic drift, yeah? And they try to compete with the old universities. And the problem I always had was that they never ever saw hospitality as an academic subject. In fact, the Vice Chancellor said to me, well, it's not a proper university subject. Yeah, that was a problem. And it doesn't have, because it doesn't have the same research base as other traditional subjects. And they see that as a problem, on top of the fact that it's costly now. There's no uplift of money. You get the same amount of money as you do for a law student, as you do for a sociology student, a philosophy student, and they see it as a cost. Another problem I found was they see the restaurant, and I know for a fact that other colleagues now currently working in the sector have got the same problem. They see the restaurant as a restaurant. They don't see it as a laboratory. They don't see it as a classroom. And I was told, make money from there. Open up weekends, get the students in, yeah? Because they don't see it as a learning laboratory. And I said, well, actually, you don't close down the science lab, the chem or micro lab, yeah, and just teach theory. But they don't see it as that. You see, that's the problem, because we have a frame of mind in education that's very based on classical humanist. And the problem I also have is this: that is it time now for higher education in hospitality to come out of universities because they don't want it. Should we not create institutes of technology? Yeah. That's what I think has got to happen. If we're going to follow all the policy makers like David Goddard, who says the time has come now to put more emphasis on applied learning and skills to underpin the economy. We're not underpinning the economy sufficiently enough. Now, if we look at Singapore, and I sit on a board in Singapore, they have moved away from the classical humanist system of education, the British system of education, and adopted the German system. And the reason they've adopted the German system, because they know it's better to underpin their economy. And when we look at, for example, learning in the workplace by Nancy Hoffman, who's done a lot of work for Harvard and skills, she cites that the best systems that underpin economy, I always thought it was Germany, but actually it's actually, from her research, it's Switzerland, followed by Germany. And the UK is way down the list, way down the list. And if we look at, for example, a book called The Great University Con, which is on Amazon, which I'm sure some of you have read, it cites what a massive disservice we are doing to young people. There are so many graduates in law that can't get jobs. And it cites the fact you're more likely, if you graduate from certain universities with law, you're more likely to be a barrister than a barrister. That's not my research, and it's all fundamental, basic research. So we are doing a massive disservice. But what we should be doing is gearing up youngsters to come into hospitality and see hospitality as a viable, good, sound qualification and a profession which has the status of knowledge. And that's another problem. In universities, hospitality, and the university I worked in for many years, did not see hospitality as a high status of knowledge. It was always considered a low status of knowledge. And if you talk to teachers in schools that teach food, they will tell you that they are seen as the bottom of the pile in terms of the status of knowledge. And that's a major problem, yeah, in schools. And that is passed on to young people. They don't see as food or hospitality as a real career. It's a stopgap. It's a filler in while they're at university, a part-time job. So there are many issues that we have to address, and it's not an easy one. But when I look what's going on in other parts of the world, and particularly in Asia, they don't have these problems. They're booming. You know, one college in Calcutta, where I gave an induction lecture to, their recruitment, even with COVID-19, was 900 students. I know they've got the population, but they don't have a problem recruiting. But we have a major problem recruiting because hospitality is not seen as an academic subject, and it's not seen as a proper career by many, and by parents as well, may I say, yeah, and by teachers. And it stems from the classical humanist system and culture of education that we have in this country. And what Singapore has done, they've thrown out the British system because they're a Commonwealth country, but they've thrown it out. And other countries, for example, are rethinking, the Commonwealth countries are beginning to rethink, is the British system of education, which we've been left with, the right system of education? And the answer is, to underpin the economy, they've come to the conclusion it's not. The Nigerian commission that came to see me said this is not a British disease of academic snobbery and classical humanism. It's actually a Commonwealth problem. Yeah. And we have to have a complete rethink in education. Whether it'll come about or not, I don't know. I'm quite pessimistic. But
Please.
they know, for example, the government know they've got to do something with technical skills, so they bring in technical qualifications. Yeah, they bring in diplomas, they bring in GMVQ, they all fail. They all fail. Yeah.
David, you'll find a lot of agreement from me, but I was wondering if Chris we could give the voice to Una, because actually a lot of the experience of David are similar to what I've seen, but Una might have a positive story to share from Ireland.
Thanks, Janice. I am probably very lucky. I come from an applied university at Ulster, and the hierarchy is very supportive of hospitality. And it's more broadly than that. Actually the whole economy is very much supported or very much derived from hospitality and tourism. So I suppose where we were in our history. So we do see hospitality and tourism as a key economic sector. And certainly where I am in the university, they fully support the subject area. I'm in a business school. It's given equal, I suppose, value in terms of perhaps more broader business studies or accounting, etc. And indeed, I probably have better university rankings than the rest of the business school. So I'm in a very good position. But I do think it's about an attitude of mind. And I agree with Dawn in that, I see COVID now as a real opportunity for hospitality. And I can't help but be positive at the moment, because it is refocused everybody's mind on the role and the value of hospitality in the economy, and about the role and value of those who work in that economy, and that includes our students. So whilst we were struggling to get ourselves heard before COVID, we're not struggling at the moment. People can see the value. They miss going out. They miss socializing. They miss going on holiday. So hospitality now is in a really good position in terms of profiling it. In terms of, as I said, I do come from a very supportive university. I know some of my colleagues across the sector struggle in terms of that, but I think we do need to be much more positive in the way that we handle the good stories currently, because what you would not want to get is to reframe that whole idea about people thinking that it's a dead-end job with a dead-end future career. Again, I'm probably in a lucky position. I met all my targets in terms of intake this year. In fact, I slightly exceeded them. But that may be a Northern Ireland thing, and it may be because we're captured within, I suppose, the island of Ireland. But, I can't help but being positive at the moment. And very much when I look at how we approach education or the education of our students, we look at it as a partnership and a firm partnership with people in industry. And we embed within our learning experience, there has to be engagement with industry in terms of, as you well know, we do it anyway, and I know we do it across the sector, but we have people who come in and they deliver lectures from industry constantly. We program all of that in, and we make it systematic within the education. And David, like my restaurant runs on, I think, currently on what I would call a semi-commercial basis, but we are moving to the university's investing a huge amount of money. We're moving to a new restaurant. We're going to have a cookery school, a beverage school, and we will be delivering corporate services within the university. And I am happy to do that, because I think for me, that's the way it's going to be in the future. And for me, that real life experience is a really rich learning environment for the students, as long as they're well supported in that learning with the sort of the appropriate, I suppose, team around them. So, in terms of where we're going, in terms of my university, and we very much are an applied university, it's a much brighter future, certainly for us at the moment, but I can see across the sector it's not always the same.
Thank you.
I think that's very interesting, but I think you're in the minority, I have to say, because over the summer, I've had several phone calls from colleges who have said to me, well, one of my colleagues said, I'm resigning, I'm not going to put up with this any longer. They don't understand hospitality. That was from a university. Another one colleague said he was called in, open the restaurant weekends. They made 6 food and beverage lecturers and applied stuff redundant.
David, you're absolutely spot on. Industry feels it's not fit for purpose. This is exactly the reason for this dialogue. The question is, what do we need to do to turn this into something positive? Now,
Let me add something positive, because it's not just a Northern Ireland thing. Surrey's also met its targets this year. We are still a discrete school as part of hospitality and tourism. We have not been absorbed into a business school, and we're growing. So it's not all bad out there. I'm not saying we're the majority, but
no, Nita, there's 2 points, isn't there, I think, on this. Yep. Thanks for that. One, clearly there's a morale problem. Is that fair to say across the sector as a whole?
Yeah. I think I would agree with that. But the point is, it can be done. And quite frankly, if institutions get enough people through the door, they will run those programs.
Yeah, but can I say,
wait a minute.
Yeah,
One of my biggest problems is less, and I'm not saying we're doing it perfectly, and Surrey is very much moving to a much more applied, integrating industry-led assignments and so on, as to make the thing more relevant. No, I've lost my train of thought.
Don't worry.
I think what you've got to have is you've got to have.
Sorry, the biggest problem actually is the perception of the industry by young people.
I agree. Isn't one of the? So I'm going to bring quickly, Sam. I'll just bring you in here because obviously of your background. Isn't one of the issues here, but still the argument that we don't get a strong enough message out about the industry to the young?
Well, absolutely, and I mentioned earlier in the week that the message at the moment to young people is that industry's closed, there's no jobs, lots of the employers are making massive redundancies, and that's just across not just hospitality but the leisure and tourism industry as well, which obviously hospitality sits underneath that. Interestingly, I've just come off a phone call with a school network, and they were telling me that actually having people coming into schools is actually a no-go, so they're looking at moving everything virtually. So I think there is an opportunity for us to still send a positive message to young people that our industry is an industry, a career for life, a career for not just whilst you're at uni until you get a proper job, but actually this is a proper job. And with virtual careers events and virtual engagement, we can reach far more young people, parents and teachers than we could do that just going around individually picking up schools and students on a ad hoc basis. So I think we've got to, whilst there's a problem, there's a real opportunity here.
Can I come back to a couple of points that was raised? If you've got a good vice chancellor and a good principal to support you, that's half the battle. Yeah. Now, Gary Hunter of Westminster said to me that he's a hospitality background. He said to me, he's the principal. He said to me, if I was a lawyer in this job, I'd be telling Terry, to cut costs, to do this, to do that. But he said, because I'm a hospitality person, I understand what the needs are. Now, in terms of young people in the industry, to get them in the industry, I found the best way I did for 20 years, I ran a junior chef's academy on a Saturday for young people. Yeah. And the reason I did it was this, that I needed to get conversion. And from that junior chef's academy, I got 70% conversion onto courses. And some of those students went on to basic craft courses, degree courses, master's courses. In fact, this morning, one of them, ex-student from a junior chef's academy, has just emailed me. He's about to finish his PhD at Essex. Yeah. And he said to me this morning, he would never have thought about going into hospitality. Yeah. Now, that's what we can do. We've got to get the message out there. But the message is often not clear. It's not promoted enough. And that's what we have to do. I did it in a very small way by opening up a Junior Chefs Academy on a Saturday. And what I used to do is talk to the parents. Yeah, talk to the parents. And you can convert the youngsters if you speak to the parents. Yeah. The biggest influencer of young people is actually parents, not teachers. According to Sir Ken Robinson, the great educational writer, in his book says the best way is talk to the parents.
Thanks,
Thank you, David. Can I just, since this whole has really touching the best practice theme, and we already had a couple of examples of best practice, and I'm sure there are other. I just want to hear from the industry colleagues, touching on what David was saying earlier about not fit for purpose. I want to ask you, I'm sure a lot of you have employed graduates from UK universities in your own businesses, or I hope at least some of you have. What has your experience been of those graduates? Do you think the courses were fit of purpose or not?
I think that's an interesting question. Who would like to get involved? Mariana, would you like to have some thoughts on this? Because obviously you've been working with some graduates.
I actually mentored a few graduates from Switzerland Hospitality School, unfortunately not in UK, not in USA. And I think whatever they learned in schools was very well applied in the practice. They appreciated that our hotel, at the time it was the Intercontinental Hotel, and also in Starwood hotels, they appreciated that this exchange kind of practice program, the internships were even allowed. There was a 1-year visas that they were exchanging. So I guess my suggestion just from the experience would be just mandated, make the mandatory internships over the summers, over the year after, exchange, bring the industry people into schools. I was invited to speak in Slovakia, actually in 2 hospitality colleges. And until now, I'm receiving notes from students just with either career advice or just a little inspiration or experiences that they just want to communicate and share. So I think that whole exchange, the industry going to schools and schools going to the industries must be strengthened by specific step-by-step programs that will somehow be embraced and mandated.
So you found the people you took on from the Swiss schools were fit for purpose. Fair?
Yeah, they were, and they were passionate. They were very passionate. They wanted to do that. They wanted to do the best out of it. Even if we had to rotate them from departments, even if they were in charge of dishwashing areas, but they were in charge of events, fine dining, casual dining, wherever they went, we allowed them to rotate and be in all the departments within that hotel. So they can choose and pick whatever they feel they're best at, and they had to be empowered. The program has to be specific with these internships. It's not just like, here's the cheap manpower because, you know, we're providing bed and board or whatever the program is. It has to be very specific. We had to work on exact things we're wanting these people to experience so they can actually position themselves within whatever department, whether it's F&B or front desk or whatever the hospitality sector would be.
Good. Thanks, Marianne. Alistair, can I bring you in here from the Institute of Hospitality? Your perspective of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Some very interesting points there, and I think David's got some excellent points about the way the future needs to develop. The big concern at the moment is all the graduates coming through now. Where are they going? There's no jobs in the UK. I mean, all I'm hearing daily from the contacts I have is just redundancies left, right, and centre at all levels. So it's a challenge, but as David says, we will get over it. We will prosper again, but it's going to take some time, that's for sure.
One of the things David's talking about is this gulf, isn't there, between industry not viewing education fit for purpose and where the education system is. What are your thoughts on that piece?
It's mixed views, as we've heard here today. I mean, there's certain of our members who were graduate students and come through are very pleased with their education. I'm thinking one specifically at Oxford Brookes, actually, Donald. A lot of it depends on the institution and how well they take it, whether it is taken seriously as a business, as a department that worth considering, and that comes down to that.
Okay, so Yanis, coming back to you, and the challenge here, isn't it, is about pockets of excellence. How do we get the whole to be of excellence?
Well, there's also a message on the chat from Sarah to everyone, and she states that the main problem is that industry does not seem to value degree programs. They would prefer young people to enter the industry and train them. And I'm not, that's the point Sarah is making, but I'm not sure that's always the case. So there's best practice in academia, where you have some universities that do an excellent job. They recruit students, they're supported by their deans and their vice chancellors. And similarly, industry, we do have a lot of evidence that some don't value the degrees, but is the people here from industry, would you value somebody coming into your business with a degree more or less than somebody without a degree? Similar experience.
I think it's all about the passion. There are a lot of students that actually enter the college. They feel they want to be in the hospitality, but throughout the college, maybe somehow they derail and they're just not maybe passionate, or maybe they just think that they have to go directly into the management after the college. They're not interested to start with a simple, you know, a service assistant job or a junior manager roles. Actually, they somehow feel that since they have a degree, they don't have to start from the beginning. And as you know, a lot of hospitality, it's based on how you start. You know, most of the professionals always did the coat hanging, the dishwashing, the assisting the bartenders, barmans, all those little jobs, and they work their way up. So I think there has to be that awareness brought to the students of the college, that they need to understand that just because you've studied and you have the degree doesn't mean you're just going to enter into the hotel and you go straight into higher management, because actually the respect is earned when you work your way up and when you know what the basic jobs are, the line jobs, which you're going to eventually manage. So I think that's where the little bit of clash comes with students I've had come in as graduates. They immediately assume that since they have a degree, they don't have to do those kind of line jobs. Yet, how can you manage it when you don't know what the job is? I think that's where the communication could be stronger.
Let's bring a couple of other people in. Sorry, Matthew, can I bring you in?
Can I come in there about degrees, because I think this is very important. Education is important. Degree, whether you call it degree or higher education, but you've got to teach young people to develop their mind and to think. Yeah, if you don't develop their mind and they don't challenge, how can they change things? So in higher education, you develop the mind. Yeah, and what you should be doing, in my view, in hospitality education, is applied knowledge, useful knowledge, challenging knowledge to develop the mind as well as the skills. Well, I don't like the word training, because to me, you can train a monkey. Yeah, we want to develop the mind and the people in the future to change things. Young people are the future, and they have the ability to change things.
Thanks, David.
That's important.
Yeah, it is important. Annie, can I bring you in at this point?
Yes,
that's something you'd agree with, David, wouldn't you?
Oh, David, I have an ongoing battle. I'm basically from Swiss education. I'm an ex-lecturer from the UK, from industry, and now in the business school I was at, there's no more lecturers from industry being employed. Most of the people going into lecturing roles are students coming from international, working through the process, doing their PhD and going straight into a lecturing role without any work experience. This concerns me. I've left my university because they've completely cut the hospitality degree program. So what I do now is put the word out to parents in the UK, grandparents, whoever, to sow the values, hate the word sow, but it is, sow the values of hospitality. And I go into schools, colleges. I love the chef hierarchy in the colleges because there's that instilled discipline. So the students learn responsibility from day one. And I go in and I offer scholarships for people to go to Switzerland. I probably seek out 1 in 500 students that would even consider a study abroad program in the UK, especially kids from some of the private schools that are English based. But I had an event at the Shard and I invited a young man from Gordon's school because he had what it took. I looked at him and he wanted to be in business. I spoke to him about hospitality and he's hoping to go on a visit in October to visit Switzerland. His father said to me, I don't know what you've said to my son, but he's completely bowled over. He's also taken on a part-time job in a restaurant. And I think my role is to inspire youngsters to be the best they can be. And that is what I'm doing. And I'm desperately trying to get into schools and colleges now. I'm doing things online for students so they can look at their soft skills, develop their personal development. And yeah, I could talk all day about what's going on at my university that I've left. And it's very sad. But when we use the term bums on seats in hospitality, that's what's happening at universities.
Isn't that part of the problem with the morale's down? Because actually the narrative's changed to become almost too commercial rather than about the actual core value of what we're trying to discuss.
Just to take the last point, I had a stand-up argument with my Vice-Chancellor when he wanted to go down the route of pure academic PhDs, no industry experience. I said, I need people who are active practitioners, who are on the top of their subject and they understand the needs of industry. We will then put them through more qualifications if necessary. But I need people at the cutting edge of industry and industry development. I don't want someone 5 years out of date because that's doing a disservice to the students.
Alexandra, can I bring you in at this point? Because I think you don't feel we're underplaying the point of industry support for degree courses. Alexandros?
Are you muted, Alexandros?
Hi, sorry for that. I think that everyone who has spoken so far has placed the problem, very well rounded. But I think that, I had the opportunity in the past and the privilege to work with Don at Oxford Brookes and with David at UWL. So I know exactly where they're coming from and what they are saying. And I know some of my academic colleagues here present, but I have this feeling that the industry is not interested in higher education in hospitality, or not enough interested. And I think that when you don't have the industry supporting the subject, then we are chasing windmills, basically. From our side, as educators, we are doing our best, but let's see how much the industry really values these degrees. And anecdotally, I haven't done such research, and I don't know, I'm not aware if there is such research, but I had many successful students in the 25 or so, 30 years that I am an educator, who are not in the hospitality industry anymore. They are successful somewhere else. They get all the skills from our universities, from the education that we give. They start their career in hospitality, but in the end, they end up in another sector, in banking, in insurance, and they are in charge of hospitality, let's say, but not in the clear hospitality industry.
But isn't that natural to a level?
So I'm wondering, and if you look also, at the big companies, the Marriotts, the Intercontinentals and all that, and you look at corporate level, who among those, I'm not saying CEOs, but I'm talking about executive level, how many of those actually come from a hospitality education background? And this is what worries me. And one more point that I will be brief. I was sitting in way before COVID in a round table organized by one of the major hotel chains, international hotel chains, that they were discussing how we are going to deal with Brexit. And the points that were raised by many managers, at executive level of this particular company, but also from the then British Hoteliers Association, was that university degrees are useless. They want apprenticeships. They don't want this kind of education. And the argument was, well, the students are going to take a loan of, I don't know how many £1,000 in order to get a degree in hospitality. When are they going to repay that? So I think that perhaps we need to take a little bit more seriously the stance of the industry. And there are people who value it, but what the majority does. My pain, because I've worked at Oxford Brookes, when the restaurant was closed, is how many of these industry leaders that were friends of Oxford Brookes actually stood up and say, no, you should not close it. There were a few, but how many were they?
Donald, can I bring you back in at this point? I mean, isn't the challenge here that we've got to create a more better progressive thought process to this? We've got to make a better argument.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm perfectly frank, I'm finding this conversation quite painful, you know, because I'm going to be brutal. It feels like we're treading over the same ground that is always treaded over when these conversations take place. Is it not better just to focus on, within your own institution, what constitutes excellence for you? Stop worrying about what's possible and what's not possible. Get on and just do it, you know. I think if we endlessly talk about what the problems are, then the educational sector is never going to move forward. We've heard from Una, where there's a very positive atmosphere. We've heard from Surrey, where there's clearly very positive things happening as well. Learn from these two institutions and actually see if you as institutions can flourish as well. If not, shut it down, give it up and move on to something else. Something else that strikes me, you know, there's conversation here about whether it should be apprenticeships we focus on, or technical education, or higher education, or whatever else. To my mind, there's a place for all different levels of education, as long as it's excellent. So apprenticeships, yes, absolutely. I'm a wholehearted supporter of apprenticeships. I'm a wholehearted supporter of further education in a variety of forms, but also of higher education. And students who graduate from good schools go on to flourish and do extremely well in life. And there's no doubt that they get a great deal of value from the educational experience. If there are parts of the industry that don't value higher education, don't work with that section of industry. Seek out employers who do respect the quality of graduates coming out of the best schools and work with them. And, David made a point right at the beginning about the opportunities for graduates are not that much different for people who don't do degrees. That's not actually the case, factually. Students who graduate from university, there is evidence shows a pay differential, and they tend to go into professional roles in a way that non-graduates don't. So we need to be clear about that also. So I'm maybe rambling a bit, but I suppose my main point is, there's a place for great education at all levels. There are great employers who are seeking to work with great educational institutions. Let's get on and focus on the best in education and the best in industry. Champion that and put these arguments that we have been talking about for 25 years to one side. It's time to forget about them and move on to a more positive plane.
Yanis?
I need to add a question there. That was not me. That was a quote from a book called The Great University Con, which is well read at the moment. This is not my research. This is the research done by other professors. But I think it's very important that you made some very valid points. It is about your institution and driving your own institution forward if you actually have got the support of your Vice-Chancellor and the senior management. I think that's important. With regard to apprenticeships, I think, apprenticeships are a good thing. I think all levels of education are a good thing. I sit on the Institute of Apprenticeships. I'm a great critic of the standards. I don't think they're particularly good. I think that they're written by people first. I think the best people to write qualifications are universities, are colleges, are awarding bodies. I've just validated several courses this year for universities, help validate, and they're excellent. They're at the cutting edge of of the subject matter. And I think that's important. I think the universities, the colleges are the best places to write qualifications. And I'm a great critic, I'm sorry to say, of People First and those standards. To write standards on 2 sheets of A4, to me, is a nonsense.
Do People First still exist?
They still exist, yeah.
Do they?
Yeah.
All right.
They still exist.
Sorry, over to you, Anis. I thought they'd gone.
All right, so I'm going to try. It's a challenge, but going to try and link 2 of those themes: the best practice and the exchange industry academic. Now, what we heard is, and we experienced here, is that there are a lot of problems we've been identifying over decades now. But what are the solutions? And I'll propose to you 2 possible solutions. And if you have more, please propose them, and we'll see which one we might be able to adopt them. I heard a lot about control and support and willingness. I mean, don't use the analogy that if something doesn't grow, then move on. But every kindergartner will say that's one approach. The other approach is to get an allotment and start raising a lot of fruit. So this is a possible solution. As crazy as it might sound, could industry and academia come together? And by academic, I mean both colleagues from universities, higher education, and colleges, and put their money where the mouth is, and have total control of a virtual university which has industry experience. The people work in the industry. The curriculum is developed by both industry and academics and college colleagues, and we use that to blend the best practice both from various universities and colleges that exist and industry. Solution number A. Or solution number B, the easiest and cheapest, to join forces and come up with a narrative, a PR attack, if you like, both to vice chancellors across the country, where we just focus on the positives and the best practice, but also the general public. David and others talked about parents and teachers, and to keep on pushing and talking about the narrative of what is good about this industry or the sectors in the industry as a career. And I'll pass on to colleagues for comments.
Anyone like to comment on that?
I think, as Sam said earlier, we are at a perfect time, mainly unfortunately associated with COVID, to get into more places to talk about the industry in a very positive way. So CHME, we had our initiative to try and get a video together made by alumni from various institutions that have gone into the industry about what a great career this can be, and to try and get over the poor pay, rubbish hours sort of perception that still pervades. And even if we've been talking about that for years, and I wouldn't argue with that, we've still not overcome it. So there's still perhaps some work to be done there.
Can I just point at a couple of obvious things? We need to get food education properly embedded into the primary curriculum. We've seen so many great things happening with the doctor school over the last 30 years. Parents are absolutely key to this, as has already been mentioned. And we need to build a really top-class institute, global authority for hospitality to give it the credibility it deserves.
No, I agree on
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
I could go on for ages about apprenticeships.
I mean, I agree about we need to create a world-class institute, don't we, over here? And I think that's a really key challenge. Moslet, can I bring you in at this point? Because obviously you from UKCC have actually been trying to do a lot of work bringing young talent in as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so what we've been trying to do is encourage more people to get involved in the hospitality sector and to give them that platform to help them build their experiences and take them onto a professional level. I mean, I didn't know about students, 2 of the students that we've been working very closely with, who we took to the Culinary World Cup last 2 years ago. I would have loved to bring them onto here and share their experience of how they've developed from Central Bedfordshire College into working at Luton, who at the moment, and they're doing very, very well. They've been working with Steve Scuffle, who's been one of their tutors, and Raj Windal, and Yeah, this would be something that I think what we need to do is, being part of the industry, I feel that I don't think there's enough people coming out of the colleges, experience to work with us, to take to the, you know, to develop them. I mean, they can't come out the college and universities as managers or head chefs, obviously. They would need some practical experience as well. So if they were coming out to the colleges, to the industry, where the industry can actually then develop them to become the managers and the head chefs, and even senior levels at a bigger kind of you know, hotels, and that could be the way to work with them. So
Right.
what we, sorry.
Thank you. Matthew, can I bring you to this point? Because you have a different perspective, won't you? You've done a lot of work with students all across Europe.
What I've done, and I still continue to do so, I mean, like obviously more on a mentoring approach, which I think, you know, is essential, you know, for the kids those days. Now, when I think, you know, I think we are also misleading to me that generation or any generations is also about the concept of hospitality. Okay, and I think hospitality is like same thing when you say, or someone would, you know, study or tell you, oh, I'm studying health, and okay, I mean, like hospitality, let's not forget, is before, you know, even to be a function, it's a state of mind. Okay, I mean, is the concept, you know, and I don't bring that up, you know, I mean, everybody who has, you know, learned, you know, Greek or Latin, you know, will understand the meaning of it, you know, but I think that a lot, and by putting obviously that hospitality, we lose the students, okay, or we lose obviously their interest on the content within hospitality, okay, and I've seen that, you know, and I still see it, you know, where obviously schools, that many of them, and with all the respect, you know, we're doing very good job by teaching the practical or by teaching revenue or by, and so on, to put the hospitality umbrella, okay, on their institution, which is great, okay, but without explaining really, and even to the parents, okay, you say to the parents, you know, hospitality, you know, if you don't explain them under, you know, that there is the traditional sector, which we shouldn't be ashamed of, and when we say traditional sector, we all understand what it means, and on the second part, you know, the experience economy, which technically you find obviously the customer service approach to any other type of business, you know, including banks or whatever and so on. I think it's essential, you know, to me to you know, explain and teach, you know, obviously this, you know, because it's like you know, you go into a school and they're going to tell you, yeah, I'm going to teach you health. Yeah, well, but health, what is medicine? Is you know, it's a spa. It's you know, you see what I'm getting. So I think every schools that, you know, will need to support whatever industry within, you know, again, this hospitality umbrella, but I prefer to call it the traditional sector and the experience economy, should be better, you know, to not be ashamed of what, you know, they have been teaching so far, okay, and so on, and not following, sorry, and I'm not there, you know, to put some bad words regarding universities which are teaching, you know, sometimes very generalist topic and so on, is to stop, you know, to, you know, as well trying, you know, to make our industry to be generalist, okay, so that makes sense?
It does, it does, it does. Julia, sorry, you want to finish off? Do you want to finish off, Matthew?
No, I'm done. No, I can carry on, but I'm done now.
Thank you. Julia, can I bring you to this point? Julia Sibley, because isn't a lot of this the kind of same argument we've heard for a number of years now, and we seem to be struggling to move this on a bit. Do you agree, or do you feel this is progressing? Julia?
She's gone, maybe.
She's gone?
You disappeared.
No, there we go. Is Margaret there?
I'm there, yeah.
Can I bring you in unfairly then on that one?
Yes, you can.
As a fellow Spurs supporter, we can both be more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think many of the arguments, yes, we've heard before, and I do worry that we're going to continue to hear them. I do think there needs to be more focus on some of the positivity that has come from this, some of the good practice. We've worked with UNA, we worked with Surrey, we've worked with Oxford Brookes, and still continue to work with them. And I think they're doing great work. I do think one thing that's come out of this is that the government has actually acknowledged the importance of the sector. They talk about hospitality all the time at the moment. We've never heard that before, certainly in the years that I've been working in this industry. So I think, we should take something from that and, turn that into a positive, that at least, that they realise how many jobs are created by hospitality. And I think that will help with the educational side, hopefully.
Thanks, Margaret. So Yanis, coming back to you, clearly there's examples of great practice we should be highlighting. Question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Mariana posted a comment on the chat about, TED-style talks and getting the passion ignited with students. And that brings me back to the original crazy idea. I think having I don't know if you guys have seen the University for the People or University of the People. I think it's an American initiative where it's free education, basically from volunteer academics and industry people from American universities. And it's completely free to anybody who wants to participate. So why can't we have a more planned effort in getting those best practice examples on a forum? You can call it whatever you like. You can call it the online hospitality university. All it takes is a YouTube channel and a concerted effort to start putting some of those talks. A lot of them are happening online now anyway. The only difference would be to get the consent from these people that are doing them, and possibly some academics as volunteers to do some talks that can be accessed both by parents and by potential students or even current students. That acts both as a PR solution, if you like, to have a voice from both industry and academia, and also acts as a resource, if you like, for those who want to study hospitality. Am I dreaming here? No?
No, I think that's a good idea. I think anything which highlights the good case is obviously good. Donald, bringing you back in at this point, but isn't there still something deeper we need to do in terms of, because actually whether it's the mentoring or the coaching or the teaching to parents, the whole thing, and we still got to progress this a bit?
Yes, clearly. I mean, the fact that we are still talking about the same things means we do need to progress it somehow. I mean, I do wonder whether, that there's a dual thing that has to be done. One is to simply celebrate what's going on in these institutions that are flourishing, because, you don't want to take anything away from them. Explore why they're working so well and communicate that. But maybe it is time also to set up a new institution that is unburdened by the constraints of the university system, that breaks down barriers between FE and HE, that is responsive to the new world, that adopts a progressive approach to education, that is, prepares students for the life as it's going to be in the future. And maybe if, we've heard from various people that one of the barriers to moving all of this on is that the university framework doesn't necessarily suit hospitality education. Well, maybe what we need to do is create a new institution that is free from these constraints and can do what it wants to do in a way that's appropriate. Whether or not that's some lectures online or whatever, I'm not entirely sure. That could be something. I think though maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's time to change the narrative and actually.
Well, it ties in with David's point, isn't it? Because one of David's underlying points is that unless you've got it supported by a chancellor, you don't have a chance. So I suppose on that, you need to change that narrative, don't we?
Yeah, and raise the game really. And it goes back to my first point about banging heads and brick walls. I mean, don't spend your entire career being part of an institution that where ultimately it's never going to move forward positively. Let's focus on these institutions where there is a positive environment, where they are able to flourish, and then potentially create a parallel system as well.
Thank you. Yanis, do you want to come back on that point?
Yeah, I mean, we're throwing ideas here. The whole point of this is a discussion to come up with the acorn seed, if you like, that might grow to a tree. So it'd be great if we look into the future. And there is another danger in the future, which it's a little bit distant into the future, but in a couple of years, maybe 3, there will be a flood of students, and we might forget. Suddenly you will see a lot of universities rushing to start opening any courses that they feel they can fill classrooms in, and hospitality might very well be one of those. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that whatever is the way forward, we have to be strategic, and we have to be consistent, and we have to try and sustain that for a number of years, because the biggest problem, I think, I've been now for my sins, this month is my 20 years, 2 decades in academia, many years in industry, and still have one leg in it with a couple of businesses. But the conversations have been the same. I remember, I think I stepped foot in this country in 95, 96, and the conversations still remain the same. So it's about time, I think, we start, and that's why I'm talking about small actions, the first step forward to then walk that mile. I think it's important that we come out of this conversation, and the one on the 30th, I think it is another conversation where we try to capture some way forward that is positive, both for industry and for colleges and higher education, because there's still that divide between colleges and higher education. And I think we have enough existent organizations. You've got the Institute of Hospitality, you have the Savoy Education Trust, you've got the Council for Hospitality Management Education, you've got EP here. We've got enough to create a consortium where we keep on taking this forward and we keep on pushing to see some positive solution. But I will come back to the point of Alexander's, where I'm pretty sure a lot of industry colleagues are banging on the government door saying, what are you doing for us? So what I'm asking is also to continue doing that with academics and with vice chancellors and with deans. If you're truly passionate about getting talent that is equipped, not just about how to serve tables, and I say that with great pride because being a waiter paid for all my degrees, but also have a very acute problem solving and other soft skills that seem to be so good for other industries that are poaching our students, as Alexander's again said.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just a question on this one, because one of the, again, you are right. This has been the same discussion for the last 20 years in some ways. I mean, one of the things is always we focus on is how many students we lose, but it's not that much different to other industries either, is it? As David said earlier, the amount of law students who can't get jobs as lawyers, the amount of accountants who stay in accountancy is not that many. I mean, people do naturally transist to another, or to make the transition to another sector. It is a natural piece of this. Is that fair? Because I think sometimes we get caught up on that piece, but actually it's more about how we educate them and prepare them for work life that's important.
And I think to add to that, we need to take pride that even if those students move on to other industries, unlike other sectors, if I learn to be an architect, I may never build a house in my life if I choose another industry, but our students still carry those life skills from the technical skills to all the way to the higher skills that actually help them through life, because hospitality is not just a career or a job, it is a lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I think one of the biggest...
Sorry, no, please, must go after you.
One of the biggest things that I was talking to somebody recently, that children learn from the hospitality, or the younger people learn from the hospital, even if they went into becoming a lawyer or a accountant, they learn people skill from hospitality. So I think we should be proud to say that, people do learn practically working. Doesn't matter what jobs they do. Look at Rishi Sunak. He worked in the hospitality sector before he came where he was. So we should actually be proud to say that they can move on to other work, but hospitality can teach you a lot more than just cooking.
The largest emphasis now is on customer care. And we find a lot of our students are nabbed up by American banks because of customer care being a key property that they learn about, basically.
That's true.
That's true. Can I make a couple of proposals as we come towards the close of this session? Number one, surely one of the things we've got to do is start talking up the best cases and actually profiling the best cases, whether that's through TED Talks or whether it's through case studies, but probably highlighting really good examples. I still want to come back, and also then we can look at the idea of Donald's point about creating new solutions that are slightly separate. And the third piece is, isn't there still a piece there we need to go back to David's point, the VCs need to be lobbied, courted, educated, whatever the right word is, to be more supportive of this industry.
Yeah, great.
Are there 3 action points that people agree on?
They think that hospitality is cooking and waiting. They don't see it as a business as such. And what COVID has brought about is the government realise now, for the first time, I believe, ever, the importance of hospitality to the economy and the number of jobs. So what we are dealing with now is the struggle for dignity and status for hospitality in the 21st century.
Can I add mental health, David, to that scenario? Because government is now realizing what hospitality has been doing for the mental health of people, not just the economy.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's try and work on that, those 3 areas, I think, as key action points, if you agree. And then what we want to do is we want to hold a follow-up session. We're going to hold it on the 30th of this month, where we want to try and make sure we progress from there. So we'll come back on that as well. I'm conscious of time. Any further points anyone would like to add at this point?
Can I just say thank you to everybody who you know, you're volunteering your time. Even that, to me, is an example of best practice. So thank you so much for coming and joining us and adding your comments and your thoughts. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much indeed. I agree on that. And it's been a great discussion to hear, but one we have to solve. So thank you. We have recorded this. We'll release the recording probably tomorrow, just for everyone's note. And let's see what feedback we get. And let's perhaps touch base next week as we prepare for the 30th as the next step. We'll email everybody from there.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for your time.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You gonna stay a bit back, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Matthew, you still there? Is he gone?
I think Matthew left his laptop and he probably thought, you know, I had enough of these academics.
Well, that's interesting. Sorry, 1 second.
Some progress, I think. Some good points. Thank you for